Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second Florida Nature Walk. My name is Margaret Davenport, and I am the Jill Abrahamson Memorial Environmental Education Intern here at Archbold. Today, we'll be joining Mr. Dustin as he explores a seasonal wetland. A few things to remember as we get our program started. The first is that all participants are muted and your video cameras are off. So if you'd like to make any comments or questions, you can use the chat button to communicate with Mr. Dustin, other participants, and myself. Just when you're using the chat button, to make sure that you're choosing all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your comment. As well as for questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen where you can type in your questions that Dustin and our guest will answer at the end of the trip. Great. So that all being said, it's a beautiful day, and I'm going to hand it over to Dustin in the field. Dustin,
hey there,
are you there?
Margaret. It is a beautiful day out here. It's gorgeous. It's a little chilly for Florida. It was in the 50s when we checked before I started hiking out here. But the sun is shining, beautiful blue skies. I am loving it. The birds are chirping. It's wonderful. I do want to reiterate a couple things Margaret said. Please use the chat. Type your thoughts, type your observations. I'll ask you some questions here and there. If you're on Facebook, you can put those questions right on the comment section and someone will paste them into Zoom, so I'll see them as well. Well, today we're talking about seasonal ponds, and I'm in one right now, and limnology. That's L-I-M-N, limnology. That's the study of freshwater ecosystems like ponds and lakes and rivers. Now, Archbold Biological Station, we own about 20,000 acres in Florida, but this part of the property is about 5,000 acres. Mostly it's scrub habitat, the real dry, white sand for the soil, feels a little bit like a desert. But what I'd love to see, the first thing in the chat is, I want you to guess how many seasonal ponds, the one that I'm in right now, do we have on that 5,000 acres? How many seasonal ponds on that 5,000 acres? Now, what is a seasonal pond? Seasonal pond, or they're also called ephemeral ponds, are ponds that change with the season. So we are in the dry season right now. It's mid-January, and the level of the pond is pretty low. It's under my knees. Back up a little bit. You can see it's about just under my knees. But if I was out here in, let's say, August, the height of the wet season, the water might be up to just under my chest. Other seasonal ponds at Archbold sometimes totally dry up this time of year. You can walk around out there without getting any mud on your boot. But you will notice that the plants in that area are different than the ones that are in the scrub. And you'll notice that instead of white sand, you have actual soil, dirt under your feet. So has anybody put anything in the chat? I'm gonna pull up. I didn't see anything pop up. How many seasonal ponds do we have here at Archbold Biological Station? Okay, I'm going to give you the answer for this one. Over 800. That's 8 with 2 zeros. Hey, 10,000. Not that many. Over 800. Still, that seems like a lot. Not as much as when 10,000, but that's still a lot. And it will change from year to year because sometimes you've got a real wet year, other times a real dry year. And sometimes the ponds that seem disconnected some years, when you have a big rain event like a big hurricane, those ponds will get so high that they'll start connecting to each other. The other thing we're going to talk a little bit about today is invasive species, which are species that are not native to this area, but that have invaded from other places. And when you get those high water events, that's one way that invasive species can move into your remote ecosystems. Well, I think of ponds as just full of life. When you're walking around the habitat near here, it's a tough place to live. It's very dry, and that sand doesn't hold water very well. And then all of a sudden you come across these ponds, just dotting the landscape. And these are just full of life. You know, they're providing water for the animals to come down and take a drink, but they're also full of, you know, frogs and little fish and all kinds of little critters. So I'm going to pop up a video of what this looks like in June. Out here this time of year, there's not a whole lot of I don't see a whole lot of insect activity or tadpoles, but check out what I found when I came out with my wife in June. Oh, hey, Margaret, we're not getting any sound. Can you try resharing your computer and making sure the sound is connected?
Yes, whoopsies, sorry about that.
Beautiful. Look at all those tadpoles. That was really pretty amazing. In that video, you saw my wife, Emily. She's a biologist, and she had done one scoop with her net and got all of those tadpoles. Her hands were just filled with tadpoles. If you recognize any of those other critters that were in the video, type it in the chat. The one that I really like that's in there is the water scorpion. It's the insect that looks like a stick bug. And when we first got the water scorpion, it was moving all around and everything. But then after a little while, it settled down and it went into kind of like a camouflage or hiding position where it just stuck its arms out in the front and just stayed really still. It's called a water scorpion because of that big long the big long tube on its back. That is not a stinger. It's like a straw. It's for breathing, and it'll go up to the surface of the water, and it'll boop just poke that little straw out there so it can get some oxygen, which is pretty darn cool. Well, I am over here by this is like the centerpiece of this whole seasonal pond out here is all these sweet bay magnolias in the middle of this little pond. And I thought it would be cool to take a close look at the bark. And there's some Spanish moss growing on here, some lichen growing on. this on the bark here, it's just beautiful. So I'm going to show you with my macro lens. This is a magnifying lens on the phone, and it's like stepping into another world. Let's take a look at this with the macro lens. Let's see here. Oh, let's look at this one right here. I'm gonna switch my lens around. And I get up real close. Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh. Look at that. This is what Spanish moss looks like up close. And I have to say, I actually didn't practice with this one, so I've never seen it with this lens on. It is gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna go down and look at the bark. Let's come down here and look at some bark up close. If I can get it in focus there. Oh, there it is. Ooh, with that lichen on there. Oh my gosh. So lichen is part fungus, part algae. And the fungus makes the body of the lichen. Oh, there's some nice lichen. The fungus makes the body of the lichen, and then the algae is living in it and photosynthesizing, making food for the lichen. Let's go down. Here's a different type of lichen. I'm going to zoom in on this one. See, there's a couple different kinds here right next to each other. And again, that stringy thing there almost looks like a little snake or something. That's Spanish moss. Oh, whoa, look at that. Okay, I'm gonna go down a little further. Check this out. This is on the lichen. All these little red blobs, and I'm not sure what those are. If they have to do maybe with reproduction. If we have any lichen people here, type it in the chat. Is this reproduction of the lichen? I don't know, but my goodness, that's gorgeous. Wow. I love putting on this lens because it does feel like it's like you're going to a whole nother place. We have our normal senses and what we see and experience of the world, and putting a lens like this on reminds me that what we see is just a small part of what's out there. And so many little critters, like there's always ants running up and down the sweet bays. Their world is this miniature world. I love it. In my pocket, I brought a little glass jar. I want to show you the water here. Now, those of you who are from Florida are going to be very, very familiar with the dark water that you get here in Florida. Oh, that looks nice with the light, with the sun coming right through it. See, there's all kinds of little bits of vegetation in there. But that color is essentially tea. It is stained by chemicals called tannins. Most plants have tannins. They can be in the roots, in the growing parts of the tree, in the heartwood of trees. And that's what, when you make tea, that's what changes the color of the tea and gives it the bitter taste. Tannins, I was just looking this up the other day, they seem to do all kinds of things. I'm gonna try to get better lighting on myself. Whoop, there we go. Tannins do all kinds of things for plants. They help protect them from fungus, from insects. They're in the roots. They help keep pathogens from diseases from getting in and attacking the tree. They also seem to maybe protect against like weather, even maybe cold, and might even stimulate growth. The list is really long of all the things that tannins do for plants, which is pretty amazing. When people see me out here, sometimes they worry about me a little because they think, Dustin, what is in that dark water? You can't see what's underneath you. How do you know you're not about to step on an alligator or something, and we are in Florida. Any body of water might have an alligator in it. I've never seen one here. This isn't a spot where they hang out. But what could be in this water? We're gonna pop another video up. This one's about 7 minutes long. I came out here with Alan Rivero, a researcher, and we put out some traps. He's going to join us for the question and answer at the end. Check out what we found. This is my first time ever setting fish traps. So I've asked my friend, Alan Rivera, to come out here with me. You can see we're socially distancing out here. And he's gonna check the traps while I film. So let's see what we got.
We have some tadpoles in here. There's a scorpion bug.
In the traps, we found a lot of tadpoles, and we did get a water scorpion, but Alan and I were both hoping for a little bit more. So he is going to reset the traps, and I will come out tomorrow morning and give this another try. He's going to give us a couple of tips for how he places his traps. Hopefully, with his experience, his spots will be better than mine.
A lot of ecologists and biologists use drift nets and drift fencing to kind of corral animals to go into a trap. We can't put drift fencing in here, but we can utilize natural areas that we could fake as a drift net fence. So this log acts like a nice little barrier. I like to have one end of the trap on the ground. So that way anything that crawls in the ground, a lot of small turtles like to crawl on the ground, as well as amphiumas and sirens. So we did set a trap here before, and I liked it, but I think we can make it a little better. So you see this little opening here. It's like a nice spot for stuff to hang out. It's not much, but it's something we can work with. So I'm going to lay down a trap. It's shallow enough here that I'm not even worried about a flotation, and it's not supposed to rain. So I think we'll be okay.
Yesterday, we caught tadpoles and a water scorpion. I'm back again this morning. Let's see if we found anything different. More tadpoles. A whole lot of tadpoles. Tadpoles. Let's lift it up and see if we've got anything here. We just hit the mother lode. We've got something pretty cool right here. Any guesses? What could this little beastie be? This is a giant salamander called an amphiuma. I'm gonna go check the other traps, and I'll come back here and put my phone on the tripod and let him out of the cage. If I could have picked one thing to find out here this morning, it would be a two-toed amphiuma right here. There are mud turtles, there's water snakes, and we could have caught both of them in this little minnow trap, but this is what I was hoping for. I am a little nervous because I've never handled one of these before. They can bite. They also are very slimy. I have a net, and I'm going to open this up and try to get him into the net so you can see what he looks like a little bit better. I'm going to open the cage and try to get him to go in the net. I don't know if this is going to work. He's moving around. He might just take right off, and the water's behind me, so he might just slither right back in the water. Amphiumas look a lot like an eel, but they do have little legs. They're giant salamanders. I put these traps out overnight because I know this is a nocturnal animal, and I was hoping we would catch one when I came out here in the morning. They live down in the mud, and they eat all kinds of stuff down there. There's lots of tadpoles in there right now, so they eat those little fish. There are some small crayfish in this pond too, so they'd eat those as well. Let me unhook the trap. And let's see. Hold this right in front of me and open this up. If we're lucky, He'll stay in there for a second before running off. I can see his slime. That's a defense. He's produced a lot of slime. I see little bubbles all over the place. There you go. There you go, right there. Can you see him? There he is. Take a look at our new friend here. He's looking around. He's gonna exit pretty quick. You can see his face. He's about to, his head's right over here. There he is. He can breathe out of the water. This is not a fish. It's not an eel. He has lungs. Oh, wow. Can you see his eyes? Beautiful, beautiful. I'm gonna move my hands out of the way because they do have teeth, and I have heard that they can give a pretty nasty bite. I don't want to take them out of the water for too long, so I'm gonna stick them back in there. And wow, very cool. I put our Amphiuma friend away, and I'm about to take off. Thank you all for joining me on this adventure, setting fish traps and seeing what we found. Pretty amazing, right? So those Amphiumas are just hanging around out here. Other times I've come out with Alan, and we've got snakes and little Asian cichlid fish in those traps as well. And Alan will be on when we do the question and answer in a few minutes, so you can ask him some questions about the things that he's caught at this pond specifically, and at some of the other ones around here. Oh, I forgot to tell you the name of this pond. This one is a special one because it's where we take all of the summer campers every year. The scientists call it Neofiber Pond, and I call it Muskrat Pond. Neofiber is the genus name, the scientific genus name of the muskrat. So it is Muskrat Pond. There's a flower I want to show you that I had never noticed here before. And when I came out yesterday, I found this flower. And first I'm going to show it to you. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. And then I'll tell you the story of a little about this thing. Now, this flower is only a few inches off of the water. And I, for you, am going to get right down in the water. It is a cold morning. This water is freezing, but I do this for you. So let's get right down close and see if we can check out. These flowers are pretty small. Ooh. Woo. Okay, these flowers are pretty small. You can see they're very pretty. These little pink, purpley pink flowers here in front of me, growing right in the water. You can see we're in maybe 6-8 inches of water here. So I came out yesterday and I found these. I took pictures of them. I looked in my Florida wildflower book, could not find them. I got on the iNaturalist app, searching on there. I was just totally out of luck, couldn't find them. I started sending the pictures to the different researchers at Archbold, and it took a little while, but they figured out what it was. And here's the thing. The reason that I wasn't able to find it, and it took a while, is this is an invasive species that we have not seen before at Archbold. It has been collected in Highlands County before, so it's been around, but we hadn't seen it here. It's called Asian marshweed. The scientific name is limnophila. So remember that limno means water, right? Fresh water. Phila means it loves it. So this is a freshwater loving plant. Limnophila sessiliflora. I don't know how to pronounce Latin. Sessil means that the flowers don't have stalks. Sessiliflora. So the flower just comes right out of the stem at the end. And this is a plant that you see in the aquarium trade. So when I Googled that up, I found tons of videos from people who you know, sell aquarium plants and teach you how to manage them and stuff. But and that's how they ended up as an invasive species. Now this is a big deal. This is a bad thing. We already have plenty of other invasive species. So to come out and discover this out here is worrying. And so the researchers started emailing each other back and forth yesterday and this morning saying, whoa, what's going on here? We need to get out to this pond, see if we can take care of these. But I'm going to show you how pretty they actually are. Let me switch my camera around. And I know it'll be blurry for a second here. There we go. See the, oh, there it is. There they are. Beautiful little flowers. Actually, people who have these in their aquariums generally trim them so they only have the underground part or the underwater part, and the underwater part of the plant looks a lot different than the part in the top. So they actually don't use them for the flowers, unlike people who have water hyacinth, who have pretty flowers. They like them because they're really easy to grow and they look good in your aquarium. The underwater part. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna flip back, set my camera back so you see me again. There I am. Yeah, so again, this is something that we need to keep an eye on, see if we can remove these from this pond, keep this from spreading to other parts of the property. What makes me a little worried is that we bring our campers out here. Could it have been a summer camper that had a little piece of this on their shoe or something like that brought this out here? If you are taking your boats out places, make sure that you clean the bottoms off before you bring it to another place. And sometimes people wonder, you know, Archbold is so huge, how come we can only go on the little nature trail? Well, think about it. We this is one of the reasons right here. We set aside most of our property to be wild and free, and so the researchers can get out there. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is lakes. We've been talking about ponds, but remember, limnology is more than just ponds, it's rivers and lakes. And we have a lake at Archbold called Lake Annie. It's one of the deepest lakes in Florida. It goes down almost 70 feet deep, and it's about 90 acres. What's so cool about this lake is that because it's so deep, down at the bottom, it's cold, there's not much or any oxygen, and down there, it doesn't mix. So when the pollen from all of the plants lands on the lake and sinks to the bottom, there's nothing to disturb it. And then the next year and the next year, it gets layers and layers. So we have scientists that have come here and taken cores, scooped up that gunk at the bottom, and have been able to actually see back in time 40,000 years. I think 44,000 years was the furthest back they've looked. And they can see how climate has changed during that time. That was in the middle of the last ice age. See how the plant communities have changed. I always wondered, what did it look like? I could never picture it. So we're going to pull up a video here. I went out with Dr. Mark Brenner and Jason Curtis from the University of Florida. And check out, this is what it looks like.
We take the boat out to the site. We anchor very well. In this case, we were able to tie off to cables that are coming off the buoy. And then the next step would be to put together our core gear and organize it. One of the first things we do is we have a little sonar device and we get an accurate measure of the water depth, because this will tell us where we need to start our drive and capture that topmost meter and a half of sediment. Once we have that established, we can do those calculations, and then we begin to assemble our coring apparatus, which consists of a polycarbonate core tube that's about 2 meters long, a series of coring rods, 1.5 meters long, a couple that are 1 meter long, and a piston and basically a cable. So what we do is we put the piston in the bottom of the tube, connected to the cable. We put a head on that tube, connect it to a rod, fill this thing with water, and start going down, passing the cable and the rods down until we're at about 30 centimeters above the the sediment water interface, above that sediment surface. Then we'll tie the cable off and prepare to go ahead and collect our sediment. So after we collect cores, particularly these uppermost sediments that are not very well consolidated, we bring them into the boat, seal them up, and we try to keep them in a vertical position so that the sediments don't slosh around. What we'll do then is we'll cart them back to shore, always maintaining them in that vertical position. We get our cores back to an area where we can extrude them. We mount them in a tripod, and this enables us to extrude them vertically by pushing upward on the bottom on the extruder piston in a very controlled way. And we collect the material that we're extruding in a tray that's at the top of the core tube. And then we collect that material into labeled Whirlpack bags or cups that are labeled so we can transport that material back to the laboratory. And what's kind of fun and interesting about this kind of work is that we can't buy a lot of this kind of equipment off the shelf. In fact, almost everything that you've seen being used today was designed and built by Jason Curtis, the fellow you saw coring with me out in the boat today on Lake Annie.
Super cool. Oh man, I loved getting to go out with them and watch them do that. And just a little bit more about that. So the first time that lake was cored was in the mid 1970s. So they've had this technology for a long time and have been able to look at this long history, and it just kind of blows my mind. So they can look at the pollen, also the fossilized bits of algae, of diatoms that are down there too. It's pretty amazing. Well, I want to wrap up here and get to the question and answer part in a minute. So please, if you have questions and you haven't typed them in there yet, please put your questions in there in the chat so we can get to them. You might recognize this fallen log right here. This is where I had brought the Amphiuma over to, and it had set my camera, my phone on when I was recording that part. I'm kind of in the shadows here. Let's see if I can move. Does that look better? No, the sun is, we're at an awkward time because the sun is right there. Try to go this way. Hey, there I am. Do I have waders on? Well, let me show you actually. I've got this on a tripod right now, so I can back up. Do I have waders on? No. I have very muddy feet. I have to clean them off when I get back home. And you could wear waders. Might be a good idea. And there are things in there that could take a little bite out of your foot, like the Amphiuma. There's an insect in there called the toe biter. Well, I've never gotten bit by anything. I've been here, many times over the years. I've never gotten bit. Okay, well let's bring on Alan for our Q&A, and we've got a picture. We'll stick the picture up that Margaret's got. He used to work in the education department. He was an intern in education in 2018. So those are photos of him from summer camp. The one on the right is at Buck Island Ranch, where he works now as a research assistant. The one on the left is right here. I'm sitting on that log that's going across the picture there. And I don't know what he was showing them, but we'd brought out, he had set out traps. So he was showing them whatever, I think it was a snake in there. Well, Alan, are you there? Let's see if your video is working.
Yes, sir, I am.
Wonderful. I don't actually see you though. Maybe I'm pinned. So I do see some comments are coming in. Let's see if we've got some questions. Well, Alan, do you want to introduce yourself at all? Tell people a little bit, maybe where you're from and what it is that you do.
I grew up in Central Florida. I'm from the area. I work here at Buck Island Ranch doing a lot of soil research and a lot of agroecology research. It's really not much more to say than that. I love this part of Florida. I enjoy being here.
And well, the other thing I would add is that Alan is a snake guy. So Alan, do you have any idea how many different kinds of snakes that you've found in Florida? Or picked up even?
Most, uh, not everything. There are a few missing gaps, but those are really hard animals to target. But I've seen most of what Florida has to offer.
Awesome. Okay, so I see we've got some questions and things coming in here. Margaret, do you want to feed us some questions?
Yes, absolutely. So the Barley family asked, when you catch a snake in a trap, can it come up to breathe, or is the trap all the way underwater?
All right, Alan, go for it.
When you set traps, you want to leave some of that trap above water so that anything that does breathe air, including snakes, can come up to breathe. You want to be conscious of the weather. If you know it's going to rain a lot, then you want to place your trap a little higher up so that way if/when water levels rise, you don't accidentally drown an animal. It's not a perfect system, but it works 99% of the time.
And I remember when Alan was teaching me how to do it, we'd put little water bottles that were empty in there to help keep the one end floating up.
Yeah, it's a really good technique. You can use those like little Pedialyte bottles are perfect for traps. They're small, they're compact, they hold just enough air to keep a trap afloat.
Okay, any other questions coming in?
There aren't any more in the Q&A, but people are also welcome to put them. Oh, earlier actually, when Dustin, you played your first video showing the different things you found this summer at the seasonal pond. Some people were asking if you saw some beetle larvae or dragonfly larvae, a dragonfly water scorpion, and just didn't know if you could answer that.
Both. We saw all of the above. I mentioned the water scorpion that looks kind of like a stick bug. The thing that was crawling around on my hand that looked like a total alien, that was the larva of, what was that one? I think it was a predaceous diving beetle larva, pretty sure. And there was also dragonfly larva too. When I go out today and I look around in the water, it's not like in the summer where you see a lot of activity, but there's still stuff out there. So I just saw a dragonfly larva out there just a few minutes ago, and saw some little spiders. I helped the spider out because I had knocked it off its lily pad on accident, and it was like stuck in the water. So I had it on my hand, and I was going to show you. I wanted to put the macro lens on, and then it fell off like right before it came back to me. So I was kind of bummed. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff out there, and all of that we found in that video. That we were only out here for maybe an hour and a half. So you're going to find tons of little critters when you come to a place like this. Alan, I see your video pop back on. Were you going to say something?
No, it must have just been a glitch.
The other thing I'll mention, I don't have any pictures of these, but I was mentioning how these dry up. So what happens to all those little critters? All the species have different ways of dealing with this, but there's species of fairy shrimp. Some people might know them as sea monkeys. They're these little critters, and they lay their eggs in the mud, and they have very hard casings, and it'll dry up, and that spot that's dried might be dried for years and years and years. We don't even know the extent of it. 10 years, 20 years, we don't know. And then you get another wet season or a real wet year that gets that area inundated with water, and that's when those fairy shrimp will hatch again. That's why people used to buy them as sea monkeys, because they could be shipped really easily because they're dried out. You ship them, and you stick them in your tank of water, and then they hatch out of there. And we had an intern here, and she actually, Ann Dunn, discovered a new species of fairy shrimp when she was here at Archbold. So there's still a lot more to discover out there. Okay, any other questions popping in? I see I've got a 1 on the Q&A there.
Yes, someone has asked, does the pond dry up all the way every year?
It depends. It depends on the pond. This one doesn't. It's, it's January right now, so a lot of the other ponds are dried up. It just depends on them. We still call it a seasonal pond because it changes so dramatically. The water level changes so dramatically. And the part that I'm sitting in right now is dry. The ground looks like a rich, dark soil with, maybe a high moisture content, but it's dry out here right now. But if I was out here in the summer, then I'd be sitting, my legs would be in water right now. So it just depends on the time of year. And like I said, we have at Archbold, many hundreds of ponds. Some of them totally dry up, some of them don't. And you get different plants at different water levels too. So that's kind of an interesting thing where even if it's totally dry and you're walking around, you'll notice, like when you're in the scrub, you see all these saw palmettos. Saw palmettos don't like to get their feet too wet. So you'll come to a spot where it's almost like a crop circle or something. And all of a sudden all the saw palmettos are gone in this like perfect circle. And you're like, what is going on here? And what is, oh, okay, that's a seasonal pond there. It's totally dry now. We just see grasses in here or some other things like that. But if we came back in August, we'd be walking through a wetland.
Someone had asked earlier if there's snapping turtles in the pond.
I don't know, Alan. What do you think for this pond?
They absolutely could be there. I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time in that pond. There's not a whole lot of food for them. But snappers can live in bizarre places. I've seen them in reservoirs. I've seen them in ditches. I've seen them in what is literally puddles of sewage draining outside of people's homes, living in literal sewage. So they make it happen.
I've never seen a snapping turtle here myself, but what I always seem to see are the soft shell turtles around here. So I wonder if there's just a lot more soft shell turtles and snapping turtles around here. Would you know that, Alan?
In general, there are a lot of soft shell turtles, but snappers are really good at hiding. They're even better than soft shells. There could easily be snapping turtles in that pond, in that wetland. At least a couple. I've just never seen one in there.
Yeah, and I always see soft shells like to cross the road. So around here, you never know if you're going to have to stop to let a gopher tortoise across the road, or it might be a soft shell turtle crossing the road. You do have to be careful with the soft shell turtles though, because they'll try to bite you. So you just got to be, real careful helping them across. And whenever you're helping a turtle or a tortoise across the road, you want to bring them to the side they're going to. Help them on their journey. If you start them back at the beginning, they just got to start all over again crossing the road. And yes, it is illegal to mess with gopher tortoises. They're protected species in Florida, but it is perfectly fine to help them across the road.
Okay, I think we have one last question, or maybe a few more, but
they're coming in.
They are. The Riley family asks and says, we live on a marsh where the water is always going up or down depending on when the beaver dams are working or not. Do we have beavers here?
Well, could you tell us in the chat where you are? They've
actually said they're in Central Virginia.
So cool. So cool. There's definitely not any beavers around here. In North Florida feels more like, ecologically more like Georgia.
Yeah. Beavers are found in the panhandle of Florida, but they're not in the peninsular part of the state, so we don't get them here.
Oh, beavers, beavers are one of those animals kind of like wolves, where some people love them and some people hate them, because they are engineers. They are habitat engineers. And I have gone out with beaver researchers in Western Canada, over by the Rocky Mountains, and over there they've got a ton of beavers, and it is amazing where they're really, you get all the water coming down off the mountains, and the beavers are really helping to control how that water moves through that landscape, and we walked across a beaver dam that was like 6 feet or so tall. We could walk right across it, and one of the researchers had actually found, and he showed us, he'd found earlier, it was the antlers of an elk, I think it was. Elk antlers that the beavers had brought in and also stuck in their beaver dam as they were constructing it. So that was pretty cool. And some of those beaver dams are there for hundreds of years. Which they've been there for a long time. So we don't do any research on that kind of thing at Archbold, but they are pretty cool. Any more, Margaret?
I'm not seeing any more questions per se, but we do have a few comments. Wayne was saying that these ponds are really important for amphibians since they lack fish a lot of times, so there aren't as many birds. Which is interesting.
Oh, Alan, could you talk a little about the invasive cichlids and what impact they might be having out here?
Yeah, for one, it is absolutely true that ephemeral ponds are super important to amphibians because they mostly lack fish, at least predatory fish. An issue with the invasive African cichlids in Florida is that they're small enough to inhabit some of these ephemeral ponds for a good portion of the year. And even if they're not there all year round, they're there long enough to kind of attack the tadpole populations and all the other little inverts that like to breed in ephemeral wetlands. But in general, yes, ephemeral wetlands are really important for amphibian breeding.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
And as a follow-up to another question, it is important, or it's not as important for an amphiuma that the pond is fishless. Amphiumas will eat anything, including fish. They're predatory amphibians, so they don't really go through that vulnerable tadpole stage. They're ready to go right after they hatch. We don't know a whole lot about their breeding habits. I think there have only been a few amphiuma nests actually found. But yeah, in general, they're everywhere. So.
All right. Well, I think that's it. So we can wrap up here. If you have more questions, throw them on, throw them in the chat. And for everybody that signs up on Zoom, we'll send you an email tomorrow or the next day with a question, with like a survey. And if there's questions we don't get to, we try to always answer those questions in the email. So those watching on Facebook, in the future, if you want to get on Zoom, you get more connected to us a little bit more. But we'll be back next Tuesday, not at the pond, but we'll be at a scrub site at Archbold. So come see us then. I think that's about it. Margaret, did you have anything else you were going to say?
Nope, that's all. Thanks, y'all, for coming.
Awesome. And thanks, Alan, for helping us out today.
No problem. And to the Riley family, I have seen 2 panthers in Florida in my life.
That's awesome. I'm still waiting for that. All right. Have a good night, or have a good day, everybody.